Tonight, we have a gripping interview for you. We will explore the remarkable life and experiences of Stephen Chua, a former member of the Singapore Special Forces and a self-proclaimed super soldier. Stephen's candid testimony takes us on a journey through hidden realities and suppressed truths as he reveals his encounters with extraterrestrial beings in Southeast Asia. Having served as an experimental pilot in Area 51, Stephen provides a first-hand account of working with retro-engineered alien technology and his experiences with reptilian aliens. His revelations shed light on the existence of clandestine operations and the threats he faced as a whistleblower. Elena Danaan, a well-respected extraterrestrial contactee, archaeologist, and best-selling author, joins us to share her extraordinary interview with Stephen. Through their conversation, we gain insight into the world of covert operations, alien encounters, and the unyielding courage of a man who risked his life to share his intense experiences. With a focus on truth-seeking and disclosure, this interview challenges conventional beliefs and delves into the mysteries of our existence. Stephen's account confronts us with the reality of our galactic connections and raises questions about humanity's place in the universe. Join us on this unfiltered exploration of Area 51 and extraterrestrial encounters, as we uncover the enigmatic world that exists beyond what is widely known. Stephen Chua's brave and candid revelations are an invitation to confront the unknown and explore the truths that lie beyond the surface.
Welcome to Veritas. If this is your first time listening, welcome home. To access tonight's full interview and all of our exclusive material, simply join the Veritas Plus family by clicking on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. And while you're there, don't forget to check out the Veritas store for a range of great products, including Focused Life Force Energy. Experience the power of FLFE with a 15-day free trial today. No credit card required. We're excited to announce the launch of our brand new Veritas Plus Insider, your source for exclusive news and insights you won't find anywhere else. If you're looking to get in touch with Mel, have a guest suggestion, or would like to provide feedback, simply click on the contact button on our website. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's show. And now, here's your host, Mel Hastelrick.
Born in France, Elena Danaan graduated in fine arts in Paris and completed a postgrad in archaeology at the Louvre University. She worked as field archaeologist 20 years of her life, among which 8 years in Egypt as an engineer epigraphist for the CNRS, Karnak, Luxor, Cairo, Dendera, and Valley of the Kings, before returning to France, assigned to the University of Toulouse. Completing studies in Druidry, shamanism, energy and sound healing, she is actually working as a spiritual practitioner. And directly from the beautiful country of Ireland, I'd like to welcome Elena Danaan. Hello, Elena, and welcome to Veritas. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Well, let me just say, before we begin, I want to thank a couple of people for making this interview a reality. Dr. Michael Sala, for putting me in touch with you. I've known Michael for 15 years now. He's a regular guest of this program, a very loyal subscriber as well. And whenever I have questions about the people to interview, he's always there for me. And also, Jeff Steckman from Focused Life Force Energy. He was the one who recommended you first. He said, you must interview Elena Danaan. And I said, in 15 years of doing this, I haven't heard her name. But then here we are. I learned about you. And as I mentioned to you offline, usually I introduce the person, I devote the 2 hours to that person, but because you have written your latest book, it's Area 51, Conversations with Insider Stephen Chua. Because of what we're about to discuss tonight, as you said, we're going to rock the disclosure boat tonight to keep his memory alive. So you have agreed to come back in a couple of weeks to discuss your story and the book, The Cedars, The Return of the Gods. So you're okay with that?
Yes, of course. This is great to honor the memory of Stephen Chua,
Let's begin, before we tell the people who Stephen Chua was, just give a little of a background of who you are, Elena, and how the two of you converged.
Okay, so I met Stephen Chua in 2020 as I just wrote a book about my abduction by extraterrestrials and a description in that book of 110 alien races visiting Earth, positive and negative agendas. And saw a video. Stephen was there.
Elena, you froze for about 15 seconds, by the way. If you want to start what you were saying, sure.
Yes. So I was invited in this interview via Zoom by a group of people at spiritual purpose, discussing spiritual topics. And Stephen was there. And that's when I met him for the first time remotely. I never met him physically, but and he started asking me questions about the alien races with very specific details. And oh, my microphone is this is going. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. And just to set the stage, if we have some technical difficulties, folks, this is not new. You know that this happens once in a while. And why?
Yes. When I'm talking about him, it always does that. Well, Stephen started to ask me questions about different alien races with very specific details, and was very impressed why he's insisting very specific questions about aliens. And then he confessed that he worked at Area 51. So everyone went, wow. And he said he couldn't really talk about it, but he was in the 1980s, a long time ago. Well, after the recording of this video, he asked for my email and he contacted me, and we started a conversation, and he's talking about that. And there was a series of emails back and forward talking about Area 51, about aliens. And he said he trusted me and he wanted to talk to me because he knew I was protected. Stephen was a very spiritual person. He had psychic powers, but I wouldn't say extraordinary powers. I would say he was a fully activated human being, as we all are meant to be. He could generate with his brain gamma waves, very very powerfully. That's why he was taken to Area 51 for experimentation. And he could see things beyond the visible also. So that's how we became friends. And one day I didn't have news from him for 2 months, I think. I don't remember exactly. And I started to worry. And it was never a question of interviewing him, or, I was respecting it because, if these people talk, things can happen to them. But he was threatened a lot. 2 months later, I received an email from him. The tone had changed. It was like 2 lines. I'm ready to be interviewed on your YouTube channel. It's now I feel I need to speak. They said something like this. And I say, no, well, are you sure? Because you're not going to go well with that. It's dangerous. And I don't know, I'm not sure about that. And he insists in a way that he was very sharp and insisting and straight. Do it. Will you do it? Okay. Finally convinced me. And I was like, oh my goodness, I pray nothing happens to him. When I interviewed him, we were attacked many times, even my side. And when the interview aired, he said everything about Area 51, about his training, because he was from Singapore, his training to kill reptilians, basically, go in caves, liberate children, villages from reptilian extraterrestrials in Southeast Asia. After the interview aired, he really pressed me to air it earlier as possible because I like to do some editing. And so he said, no, hurry up. So I put it up, and I had a message from him the following day saying he was very happy with the interview and very impressed by all the people commenting. And then that was it. And 3 days later, his partner emailed me via his email box, and she said that he died. So it was a shock for me, really, really a shock. And well, I know his physical body died, but he's still alive somewhere, because the day after I received the news, he appeared in my kitchen as a golden light being in an armor, and he said that he will always protect me. And he does. And he said, thank you. And he disappeared. And in the following second, really disappeared. The sparkles of energy just disappeared from the room. And as straight as that, in the second, my phone pinged a notification email. It was Dr. Michael Sala, sending me an email for the first time to take contact with me, because he wanted to talk about Stephen. So that was impressive, and I think Stephen put us both in contact, and that's how things started.
And he is gone, but he's not forgotten, and this is why you're here today. Let's begin with his story, because he has an incredible story. And I've mentioned before, I lived in Singapore in the mid-90s, and I have the utmost respect for Lee Kuan Yew, the former prime minister, the father of that country. And he was probably one of the smartest people alive. I studied him a lot when I was there. And he believed so much in Stephen's qualities that he actually hired him to be his bodyguard, right?
Yes.
But just go before that, when he was younger, how did he develop these skills? And he became probably the youngest colonel in the world at the age of 21?
Yes, that's right. Well, he was noticed for his abilities, his psychic abilities first. And because he had these psychic abilities, he was a formidable soldier. He was a sniper. First, he started his career as a sniper. And he was so good because he used his mind to project on the target. And he was very, very good. So he was noticed very quickly and upgraded, and he to the grade of colonel, even. So one day, so he was hired in the close protection of the prime minister at the time, and even to be his bodyguard, his personal bodyguard, because he trusted him. He trusted him to be the best. Who was Stephen Chua? He was born in a poor family in somewhere, in Singapore area. And he had tremendous psychic abilities that got him noticed. And he went even for training in Nepal, I think, with monks. He could levitate. He could move objects by distance, by the power of his mind, and he was the best at combat. Why? Because he could anticipate the moves of his opponent all the time. But not only one move, but sometimes 3 to 4 moves could see in the near future. And he was invincible. So in the army, he was sent to fight. But that's what I don't remember if he says that was before he went to be prime minister of Lee Kuan Yew, or before. I think it was before or after, maybe. The chronology is as such. He started as a sniper. He was noticed. He started then to be prime minister bodyguard, and then he was noticed by secret agency people that came from America to recruit people like him. So he was taken to Area 51 in the 1980s, then brought back to Singapore. He worked again for the prime minister, and then he was being sent to missions only him could do with his team, his soldiers, to fight reptilians. That was in the 1990s. He saved the life of Benazir Bhutto, well, once, because then,
Right.
he had the opportunity to do that once before she was assassinated. Once she went to Singapore and she was attacked by reptilian mercenaries, we could say, hitmen, reptilian, and Stephen was after them, and that's how he discovered that they existed. And he killed them with his team, and then he was sent on missions in different parts of Southeast Asia to fight these reptilians because he was apparently good at that. And that's the whole story. But who was he, to go back to this? Stephen, of course, was a starseed. I know that he wasn't from this world. His soul was from somewhere else. And he had contact with positive extraterrestrials when he was a child. He once fell off a cliff, but he was lifted in the air by and saved by a flying saucer. And there was a lady on it with long white hair. And he had assimilated her to Kuan Yin. But because that's how the best he could, depict her, filled with love, healing him as a little boy, bringing him back, etc. So he had different contacts with that, and sometimes it would take him to fly over the village and things like this. So he was very special, and I think he came here to reveal things and talk and be an insider in Area 51 and in Southeast Asia for fighting the reptilians, and testify that it was real. It was real. All of this, the reptilian child trafficking in Southeast Asia, and also what was going on in Area 51. And after he passed, I was really devastated. And I had this interview on YouTube. It's still on my channel, but it's, Stephen was tired, and he had a very strong accent. So the interview is not super good, but I had all the transcript, and I had all the email exchanges with him, and even Zoom calls, private Zoom calls I have had with him. I had everything, and I decided to make all of this public. But something always happened in my life that I couldn't, another book to write or this to do, and I had put that aside. And a few months ago, I think it was so we are now at the moment of the interview in start of August 2023. Stephen contacted me. It was in December 2022, last December. And through a dream, a very, very vivid dream, where he said to me, "You need to publish this book about our conversations as soon as possible, and you need to do it before July." Okay? He said,
and he died in March of 2020, right?
Yes, he died in March 2020. And he said, you need to do before July 2023, because it's very important, because informations are going to come out and my book needs to get out before. And he said something like, get your shit together, girl. Get your shit together, girl. Yes. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, isn't that interesting that when we began, I told you why I felt compelled to not discuss your story today and wait a couple of weeks until we did that, because something was telling me you need to focus on his story. It needs to come out. I know that you have released the book. There's the Dr. Sala interview, but if I can do something else, I will. But a few things in addition to to his background. He was a youngster in Singapore, and he joined the military. And when you join the military in Singapore, they want to check your IQ. And they did not only one test, but they thought it failed. They said there's no way that he broke the record. And the second time and the third time. And they found out that only 11 people in the world had that type of IQ. He was the 12th one. And this is one of the reasons why in Area 51, if you believe that it exists, apparently they were looking for someone that had some of his attributes. And they chose him. So he went to the Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, and Lee Kuan Yew said, yes, I'm going to lend you to the Americans for a while so you do your thing. So he came to the United States and worked at Area 51. Can you tell us in detail what he did here?
Yes, sure. So he was taken there and trained very quickly as a pilot, a F-15 pilot. Well, what they were doing there is that they had in their possession a retro-engineered alien tech, and they were trying to adapt it to planes, to fly plane by thought. And all the pilots they were using as guinea pigs were dying because they need people with very strong gamma brain waves. And to really generate the most of possible gamma brain waves, they were injecting these guys with a solution, something, a liquid, that after a while did cause their brain to mush, as Stephen said, and they died. And Stephen didn't need injections because he had this high level of gamma brain waves naturally. So they used him, and he was the only one who survived, who didn't die. So he explained to me, they would sit him in the front seat, and the co-pilot seat, there would be devices on it, very complex, with tubes going from his head. He had a helmet with tubes going from his head to the devices that were connected to the plane, navigation. And he became very good at that. He said that the piloting by navigation by thought is way much faster as a reaction, as traveling and even shooting at other targets than navigating manually with the reflexes of the body. So he became good at that. He had a little reward, a 15 eagle patch. He said he was very proud of it. And apparently Lee Kuan Yew was just like, so proud that he got this patch when he came back. And he was doing that. But then at his free time, he was hanging around, and he was getting his hands a little bit on some alien retro-engineered tech, and especially anti-gravity. So that's what he was doing. Now, he describes Area 51 and what it was to work there. So basically, there are three types of aliens there. There were three types of aliens there. Let us keep in mind this happened in the 1980s. So that's how it was by then there. Even the Vatican was involved. They had their spies, their people sent there. These three types of aliens were working with the US Air Force there, exchange in tech. And so they had, each group of aliens had their own habitat, their own underground habitat, and somewhere under the base, somewhere in S4 in the mountain, and other ones in another underground base. So basically, there were these three types that he saw and described them so accurately. The tall whites, as he called them, he identified them as Healy Tockert. These ones come from constellation Vela. They're tall whites, but they look like humanoids, but with gray types. Like he describes them as Barbie dolls squashed, like very narrow faces, white pale skin. Women had hair, but male hadn't, and feeling very superior and not friendly. And they were using little grays. Even everyone was using the little grays, the US Air Force as well as the ETs, as a workforce. So Stephen said most of them had not really no aura. That means they were synthetics and clones, and the little grays didn't speak. They were like robots, workers. And he said the biological ones, because they were stunk like poo. They were really stinking bad, and that's something that all abductees or contactees say. Yeah, they have that smell. The small grays, the organic ones, biological ones. Then you had the Mitra from Galaxy Andromeda. These are interdimensional beings, and they are a real pest. They are the ones who tortured him, and they are tall grays dark grays, very wrinkled and very angry and hateful face and expression. And that's not only their expressions, they're really like that, and you don't go near them. And he said when they want something, they just took it, and everyone was scared of them. And Stephen describes when he just came in Area 51, he said, coming in is very secured, but once inside, you're fine. And he said he was accompanied by guards when he got in for the first time with guns. He had never seen guns like this, huge things. He said, what are these guns for? Isn't it a secured, safe base here? And the guys told him, oh, no, it's not for people. It's for the ETs to protect you from them. Wow. So that was entering into the atmosphere straight, you know. So that's basically what he describes. And he had interactions with these 3 types of extraterrestrials. So he remembers 2 weeks, but he says that he probably stayed there longer. And, you know, they have time, technology to bring people back in time, things like that, you know. So he thinks he probably stayed longer than 2 weeks because he said to me once he couldn't been trained as a pilot, do the pilot experiment and then hang around. He stayed way longer than that. But they really, really messed with him. So that was a big lie. And he describes ships as well, the triangular ships, the black ones that the tall whites had that were stored underground as well. He said the floor could would open like this, and the ship would come out, and it would like so many details.
Are those triangular ships what we see now that we call the Aurora Project, the TR-3Bs? Are they the same?
Yes, and they are retro-engineered from Keeley Tokert technology.
Okay. And obviously he signed up a non-disclosure agreement. When he came back,
yes,
he met with the Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, and said, I know you have a non-disclosure agreement, but I want to know. So tell me. So he did that, right?
He did that. Stephen was so brave. He did that. And he survived until 2020 to finally tell his story and be freed from it, you know. When he said he chose me, he picked me because he knew I was protected and I was the one, I didn't get it first. But after a while, after he passed, I just realized that he was looking for someone to set him free. Couldn't live anymore with that. He was sick, he was attacked, you know, all the time. He was threatened, he was tortured. I mean, his life was a hell, you know.
So you think that through the years, because he was speaking out, the elite, the deep state, and by the way, there's a few things that I connected reading this book and the several interviews that you conducted with him. One of them being the Maitreya or the Maitreya. I believe they're the ones who want to keep the population at 8 billion. Am I right? Let me just say this.
Yes.
A couple of days ago, I wrote an article based on a 1973 document that Henry Kissinger wrote. You can see it on our website, or you can go to our YouTube channel and see it. I narrate the post. And I explain in detail that the United States has a population control for the world. Well, they will not allow it to go beyond 8 billion. But guess what? In 2022, we reached 8 billion, and it would never go beyond the 10 billion. But I illustrate the 10 things that they do in order to do that. Wars, preventing cures for diseases, food supply, so many things. It's all illustrated there. My question is it our government or the governments of the world, or is the deep state the puppet of these beings from another world?
The governments, there's a world secret government, which is dark, has been dark since a long time. We can call it a deep state. It's the same thing. They've been the puppets of an elite of extraterrestrials. There were different races, three, in fact. And it's funny because there's this triangle with the eye in the middle. It's represent also the pyramid, and the top there's an elite of ETs. But I was, because they are gone. But how it used to work, these three different elites of ETs were the Greys, the Empire of Greys from Orion, and that's so in that Empire of Greys from Orion, there was an alliance, and the Mitra from Andromeda were part of it. This alliance that they called the Alliance of the Six, that was ruled by the Greys of Orion, and comes in the same package, where the Mitra from Andromeda, the Nebu from the Greys from Orion, you had the Siccar reptilians from Alpha Draconis constellation, the Siccar, and you had the Zeta Reticuli small Greys, you had the Cygnus Solipsirae small Greys, and you had the Kili Tokurt from Vela, the tall whites. So all of this came with. So that was one point of the triangle. And then the second point was the empire, the Siccar Empire, the reptilian empire from Alpha Draconis. They were in that agreement as well, but they had their own agenda as well. And the third point was negative faction of Anunnaki led by Enlil and Ninota. But so these three were having different agreements and playing with these agreements with the deep state, and the human, the deep state, they were their puppets. Now all these ETs have been cut from Earth and removed. So the human puppets, they run without masters, and I always identified them as a headless chicken running around, you know. So, but at the time that was going on, and the Mitra, yes. And, you know, that may ring a bell to you. I don't know. You remember this radio call from a guy who escaped Area 51. He
Yes.
passed a phone call. You remember that? And he said, yes. And he said there were tall Greys, there are interdimensional beings. That's the Mitra. And they want to tame the population down and destroy and kill a lot of people. And there were only safe places you could go. And he said, they're going to find me, they're going to kill me. That matches so well what Stephen was doing. The Mitra were in Area 51, and they are interdimensional beings. What does it mean is that they can travel from galaxy Andromeda, that they call Megopei, to our galaxy like this, because they use portal technologies. And Stephen describes once such a portal he saw in Area 51. He describes it with the Mitra coming in and out of it.
He also mentioned that there are people from the United States and other countries that have been taken to other planets, including Mars, and that they don't return because they are slaves.
Yes. It's so that shocked me at the time, because I knew nothing about Mars and everything that was going on at the time. I interviewed him, and I was like, "What?" He said when he was in Area 51, he saw this shuttle landing, and human-built shuttle. You can tell the difference with ET tech. And from it came guys. They were engineers or workers, and they were coming from Mars. He had a little chat with them, and they said that they were coming from Mars. They were labor force, and they were basically slave labor there, building stuff. And they described the very harsh conditions, and Stephen speaks about that too.
I guess one of the things that impacted me the most when I read the book was something that I've recently, and I've had my suspicions for quite a while, but I don't know if you've been following the Disclosure Project, part 2023, not the 2001 one, with the new witnesses. But there's one in particular, this U.S. Marine, was the name of Michael Herrera. Have you been following him at all?
I haven't, but I've watched the hearing, when Stephen Greer presented the last with all the witnesses. I've watched that. Yes.
Well, this
very
gentleman
impressive.
said something that took a lot of people by surprise. And he said that during the Banda Aceh tsunami, 2004, I believe, he was sent with a few other Marines to an area because obviously there was a tsunami and they were trying to bring food and so on. And they bumped into this, what looked to be a flying saucer hovering, and it had some humans underneath. Humans putting probably drugs and weapons and children. And he said that they were almost killed. They were, threatened. And he said that apparently these craft are being used for human sexual trafficking. So it makes you wonder if these people are, let me just, I get a little bit confused with certain things, but bear with me here. Could it be that we're told that the elites are the ones that consume the adrenochrome? You probably know that term. But could it be that these beings are the ones forcing the elites and the deep state to sequester and kidnap all these children because that's their food supply?
For the reptilians, yes. Yes. They eat little people, yes. They used to, but yeah, that's how Stephen just testifies that he rescued children from these reptilians, and especially in Southeast Asia, they're really, really numerous there. There has been dark space programs, with the collaboration of Earth dark military programs and extraterrestrials, regressive extraterrestrials, mainly reptilians, but also the Orion Greys. In Asia, it's more the reptilians' territory, so they're going to deal with humans there and use humans, the military forces, to capture especially children, workforce, or slave trade, or, food. And they go to areas where there has been disasters, then people can be reported missing or dead. And that's very, useful for them because they take advantage of that to abduct a lot of people. When there's been a tsunami of an earthquake, for instance, tsunami, it's very easy to say a lot of people have been missing. But in fact, many of them may have been abducted for this despicable purpose, So I remember that testimony. It was compelling.
This happens all the time. Take Haiti, the earthquake. Indonesia, Banda Aceh, they have millions of people there. Oh, it was just a tsunami, took away hundreds of thousands of people. When in fact, it could be that these beings are coming with their craft, stealthily taking them over. And I'm going to say a story that I've said many years ago, but we had one person, I'm going to just name him Major Karma. He was a good friend of this program. Major Karma was a major in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, and he was a good friend of this program. He passed away a few years ago. But he mentioned to me, and he said, I'm not crazy. I'm a banker. I'm a successful individual. And I will tell you that during the Vietnam War, we saw beings, reptilian beings, and they had this technology that would make them float above the rivers, and they would look at us all the time. And it makes you wonder, these people look for conflict areas, whether it's for, disappearances, killing people, who knows, but they seem to be entrenched. And at one point in Malaysia, I believe, Stephen was closed. I mean, Malaysia, love Malaysia. They have the largest caves in the world. Can you tell us the story of his encounter in one of those caves and what he did?
Yes. He was sent because there were children missing and disappearing all the time in this area. So he was sent with his squad to this cave to investigate and eventually do something. So they were going there with weapons and everything. And they found the entrance of the cave. He said it was so big that a plane could fly in. And obviously, I tried to look at this cave, but then search for this cave. But then I remember Stephen said at the end, this cave collapsed, the entrance collapsed, so you can't find this. But there are many like this in this area, many. It's really well known. So he arrived there with his squad, and they saw a reptilian, big, tough reptilian coming out of it, and he called him Sikar, and exactly the same name that I got for these beings. And and Alex Collier as well got in the 1980s. He already knew about the Sicars, So, and Stephen also knew that name, and he named these beings like this at the time. So the being came out, and he threatened them, and they couldn't shoot at him. And the being had a weapon; it could destroy rocks, so nobody could hide behind anything. And he was very angry and massive. So others came as well, if I remember well. And so the only solution that they had was to nuke the entrance of the cave. Stephen had a big, I don't remember the weapon. It was a proton weapon. I don't remember, something that could nuke the cave.
With a bazooka.
And maybe better than me. But yeah, a very, very big weapon. And he said it was like a cannon. And he nuked, but he said it damaged him quite a lot, because it was a very big shock, and the entrance of the cave collapsed, and of course the reptilians died in it, and it was blocked forever. And they came back the following morning to be sure, and everything had collapsed. There was nothing left. So he said it. Yeah, the way he describes that,
and the kidnapping stopped after that incident, right?
Sorry?
The kidnapping stopped in that area of the world when that happened for a while.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And there was another time as well. He was called to do an action in a village where there was one reptilian that was abducting children as well. So the villagers called upon the army, and Stephen, because he had experience with the reptilians, he was called there as well. And then he was sent to different places in Southeast Asia to deal with that, because he became kind of specialist for that. And
it makes you wonder, Elena, because then you have Thailand. Thailand is known for a lot of children get abducted in that area of the world, or people from children and youngsters from all over the world are sent to that part of the world in the underground market for prostitution and all of that. And at one point, the Khmer Rouge, if anybody knows what that is, they were trying to take over Thailand. And I believe Stephen and his squadron were sent there to repel the Khmer Rouge. And they succeeded to the point that the king of Thailand was so happy that they let Singapore open a bank in Thailand. Am I right?
Yes, exactly. And that makes me think also, all these veterans, American veterans who came back from the Vietnam War, they were most of them psychologically damaged and emotionally distressed. And many of them, it was said that many of them became crazy. Now, all of this makes sense because these poor soldiers, of course, probably they were confronted to these beings and everything that was happening there. And it's sure that, it marks you for life. So I was thinking about that,
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the generation of people that were drafted and they were sent there to a foreign land to fight with it without really that much experience in military combat. And then they see all these things. And when they come back, they probably are told, oh, sure, you were just using drugs and you're crazy. Yeah. And this is why nobody talks about the Vietnam veterans that much, because they think, oh, they're all crazy. But I have the utmost respect for all these people that were sent there against their will to fight a war of attrition. And after over 57,000 people died, that's when they said, that's our number. But even our very first a person that we interviewed on this program, Milton Torres, who was the one who propelled me to create this program, he was there in Vietnam as an Air Force pilot. And he said, I lost my trust for the military because I knew my targets. And whenever I was approaching to hit the target, I was told, nope, stand down, do not hit the target. So then he knew, oh, this is a war for the elites. They just want to spend all this money. And after there's a number of people who died, that's when we're going to just call it quits. and we lost anyway.
That's so interesting. I mean, we really would gain a lot of information to interview all these veterans,
Absolutely.
I think.
And tell me more about his experience in Area 51. I mean, there's so much that he saw there, but at one point, there was one individual, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Elena, Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins
Yes.
from the Vatican, and that is a word that appears multiple times during your interviews. And I wonder, and I'll ask you why I ask you this later, but who was Dr. Jenkins that kept approaching Stephen?
Well, this is another reason why the universe puts us together and why Stephen kind of chose me. He didn't know. Stephen, okay, he hadn't read my book at the time we had this conversation. He had seen all my alien races online because sometimes I used to show in my videos, this in my book, alien, but he never got it. So when I told him, he told me first the story. He said, he was in Area 51 and he was at his spare time playing around at understanding how a certain gravity device worked, and he worked on it and it made it work. It was retro-engineered technology, and he made it work, and the thing floated. And he was approached by a man who said he was from the Vatican, and he was a doctor and reporting for the Vatican. And his name was Dr. Jenkins. And he was American, but working for the Vatican. And he said he wanted to have this device. And Stephen said, Vatican, no way, you're not having that. And he dismantled it for the guy not to have it. Sure, he was in trouble after that. But when he said Dr. Jenkins in Area 51, I had an electric shock inside of me. I said, that cannot be. Because here is what is my side of the story. When I was when I was a kid, I was 9, I was abducted by Greys. I was rescued by tall Nordic positive aliens, and they kept on interacting all my life with me. And so when I was 14 or 16, I don't remember now the moment, 14 or 16, 14, I think, a tall blonde lady appeared in my bedroom physically, and she showed me on the wall that she transformed into a screen, aerial views of Area 51, which I didn't know it was that at the time. I was 14. And we had no access to internet. Okay. It was I was 14 in the 1980s. At the same time, Stephen was there. And she shows me Area 51 fly by at dusk. And I described that later to Stephen. He said, yes, that's where was this and this. That's the entrance. Because she was showing me on the wall, on the screen, a particular rectangular building next to the kind of a hill, rocky hill. And Stephen said, oh, that's the entrance for the S4 underground facilities where the ETs are. And anyways, and she said, find Dr. Jenkins, she said, in Ohio. Oh, in Ohio. Okay. At the time, I was terrified. I was 14. I said, okay, I'm not thinking about these things. It's really terrifying.
As in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
Yes. A Wright-Patterson in Ohio, and working closely with Area 51. So this guy, Dr. Jenkins, was probably working at a Wright-Patterson, and having ties with the Vatican, and working on project for Area 51 as well, because they were like this, both facilities. And it was the same person. And it's, that's Dr. Jenkins. Really, really interesting.
What do you know about Dr. Jenkins?
When I was writing my book, I did my personal research before knowing Stephen. I said, okay, if I could find trace of a Dr. Jenkins working at Wright-Patterson, that would be super cool. And now that we were in 2020 and in 2019 when I was actually writing my book, and I said, okay, we have access to internet now. So I found a retired guy who had worked there called Dr. Jenkins in the cognitive research department in Wright-Patterson. And I noted all of this. But when, after my book went out, I want to go back to check that out, especially after Stephen told me, no trace, nothing. He never was there. And I went, have I dreamt that I saw that on the internet in the official site of the base? That was cleared. So that's all I know of him. And what Stephen told me, that he was reporting to the Vatican. And the Vatican is something I'm fighting against, this institution. It happened, and not at the time, but now more and more, I'm bringing information that contradicts their. Anyways, I'm not going to go there, but that's it.
You're welcome to go there. There's absolutely no censorship, and you know that you are being protected by not only Stephen, but by many others. But I wonder if this Dr. Jenkins was actually a reverend in the Vatican. Could that be it?
I never thought about that. Reason
why I ask you about the Vatican is Vatican, being such a small country, wields so much power, has so much capital. And as you know, there are 3 city-states in the world. The Vatican when it comes to spirituality, the city of London when it comes to finances, and the city of D.C., District of Columbia, as the war machine around the world. But the Vatican, why is the Vatican so prevalent when it comes to extraterrestrial technology, advanced technology, retrograde of technology? Why are they so present when it comes to all these conversations? I wonder.
My explanation is that they're highly involved with regressive extraterrestrials, and the Vatican. Well, if you want me to go there,
go there.
The Vatican, it's the Roman Empire who just collapsed in externally, but not inside. They became the Holy Roman Empire. It's the same people behind. It's the Illuminati, if you want to call them like this. It's the negative branch of the Anunnaki, led by Enlil and Ninurta. Enlil, who played Yahweh. They all they wanted is to maintain the people ignorant, fighting each other, and enslaved. And the only way they managed to do that is to make people believe they were gods, these Anunnakis. And Yahweh, well, Enlil, there are many now proofs that it was him. So then we need to go through all the texts, the ancient texts. But anyway, they had set up a good plan to maintain humanity fighting with each other and killing each other, and maintain them in blood sacrifices and child sacrifices. And Yahweh wanted virgins for himself. It's a bloody massacre. Anyways, when Jesus came, he was probably a hybrid. Well, I have my own theories about that. He came to put kind of balance into that, saying, hey, this guy Yahweh is not a god. He's don't worship him. He said he tried to empower people, and he was sent by the good faction, the good side of the ETs, to try to counteract this and influence people to take back their sovereignty, saying things like, all I can do, you can do, the kingdom of God is within you, blah, blah, blah. He never told about priest and church, and said, through all this. But that was disturbing the order of the Roman Empire, that we know what happened to Jesus. And then this was so strong, the movement based on love, compassion, and self-empowerment that Yeshua had started couldn't be killed. So what they do, what these evil ETs do every time when they cannot kill a belief system, they assimilate it and change it. They have kept on doing the same thing with truth and disclosure, taking the information and twisting it and reversing narratives. That's what they did with the teaching of Jesus, and from spiritual guidance of compassion and self-empowerment, they transformed it, they hijacked it in a death cult, and that's how the organization of the Vatican was built on. And I'm sorry, but the cross is not a good symbol. It's a symbol of the evil winning upon everything that Yeshua was trying to pass on as a message. And it became a system so powerful to control people based on fear, ignorance, and abuse. Like, you are born in sin, and if you don't suffer, you will not be saved, and all these horrible things that they did, maintaining people on their knees for 2,000 years, and that has been the tool, and it became so powerful, and it became the empire was an empire again, with so much financial support. They have an army, they have a secret space programs, they have satellites, they have everything, and they are one of the heads of the slave trafficking, and it's very evil. So I am in that moment in my life where I am exposing all this, and it's very very funny because in the 1980s seeds were planted. This Dr. Jenkins, who was he?
Who was he, and why the Vatican? I mean, we know, if we go back all the way to the first time that they had their telescope in Castel Gandolfo in Italy, and in the 1980s with the visual pollution, they couldn't see the stars anymore. So they decided to find another place 45 minutes away from where I live, here in Arizona. They have the Lucifer telescope right here in Arizona. It's the acronym, but they call it Lucifer. It's in Mount Graham because they needed another place. But, the practice of indulgence, a lot of people don't know that you used to pay the church to forgive your sins, to guarantee you're going to heaven. Do you really think Yeshua was the one proponent of this? But another interesting part is that you spent a lot of time in Egypt. Am I right?
Yes, I'm an archaeologist, basically, originally. And I worked 9 years in Egypt as a field archaeologist. Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
and I wanted to ask you this because you probably know the name Dolores Cannon. Do you remember that name?
Yes, I do.
Dolores, a good friend of this program, she told me in one of the interviews, she said, I went to the Vatican, and I've been there a few times, and she said, this time I had a guide who said, Dolores, I want to take you, would you like me to take you to a section of the Vatican that tourists usually don't go to? She goes, of course. So she goes into that area, and he shows all sorts of Egyptian artifacts. And then, of course, the question is, why do we have all these Egyptian artifacts here? And the guide says, oh, you don't know? Because Christianity came from Egypt. It's just we needed people to understand it better, so we changed the story. And you haven't been in Egypt. And then you look at all the obelisks going all the way from Egypt to London, to Paris, to Washington. Can you explain why we have so much Egyptian artifacts in this part of the world and in the Vatican?
Egypt was an Anunnaki colony, and they had the knowledge and the technology. But what is very specific with Egypt, and I did my master actually on that topic, on rituals and magic in the temples of the New Kingdom in Egypt. That was my master in Egyptology. So I could understand. And once, you work there, you are confronted to the frequency of the places, and you really understand how it works. And I was also explained, anyways. Egypt, as an Anunnaki colony, used the knowledge and the magic, the Anunnaki magic. Anunnaki magic is the most powerful magic in the universe, well, in this galaxy at least, because it uses cosmic forces, not only forces of the earth. And it uses magic beyond the network of this reality. Egyptian artifacts, you have hieroglyphs on it, and the hieroglyphs say formulas and magic, rituals and formulas. And when you know how to decrypt them and use them, you can become very powerful. And this type of magic, as I would say, magic, at the moment you perform a spell, it is forever until someone comes and undo it in the way it has to be undone with the keys. Otherwise, it stays forever. And when you are in Egypt, all ritual instruments that have served for magic are still imbued with this magic. So I know the Vatican collects a lot of these artifacts. The Freemasons as well. Well, they are like this, the same people. It's the same people. They are the biggest collectors, the Freemasons, of artifacts, Mesopotamian and Egyptians. They're not going to try to collect Greek or, Galician or Phoenician or Scandinavian artifacts. They don't care. They want Egyptians and Mesopotamian because it's Anunnaki magic. And they try to understand how to use that, that's why.
I wanted to say a few things, but I'm going to leave it for part 2 because these things are the ones that get us censored when we publicly share them. So I'll wait until part 2 because I want to dive deeper into this Egypt, Babylon, U.S. connection. But how can people buy the book and all your books? You have written many books, Elena.
Yes, thank you. Well, all my books are centered on my website at the page author. So elenadanaan.org/author, you see, and you see all my books. And you have the links to all the different platforms where you can buy them.
This is such a treat for me to have Elena Danaan here because I love to discover somebody who I should have discovered many, many years ago. And I feel like I know her. And based on the interviews that she's done with Stephen, wonderful job. He could not have asked for a better ambassador to continue disseminating his message. When we come back, one more hour. And don't forget, Elena will be back in a few weeks to share her own story. This is Mel Hostelrick, and you are listening to Veritas. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you for listening to the first part of this important Veritas interview. To listen to the rest and all of our exclusive material, proceed to the Veritas Plus member section or join the Veritas Plus family by subscribing. Click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for focused life force energy. Get a 15-day free trial of FLFE today with no credit card required. And if you want to get in touch with Mel, want to be a guest on this radio program, have a guest suggestion, or have feedback, just click on the contact button on our website at veritasradio.com. Now, proceed to the Veritas Plus member section or subscribe to listen to the rest of the interview. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for listening to Veritas, because you don't want to believe, you want to know.